Hey guys, Toolness One here. Long time no talk. Today my project is going to be refinishing the stock. This is a Serbian NPAP. I bought this from Bud's Gun Shop around 2014, right when AKs really started to jump up in price quite a bit. I think I paid about $549 for this, which was already expensive at the time compared to what they had been, but now I think they're $600 to $700. There's a new Zastava USA that is importing these, and I think they run about $700 for those. And really the only difference I think is it's got nicer furniture, and they did not change out the trigger and hammer to US made parts, which is part of the 922R import process. There is a problem with these older NPAPs, and I'll show you that later on, the modification that I did to try to help some of the peening of the bolt carrier. It's not a big deal, but some people have had trouble with theirs. I see a lot of hate online about Tapco AK mags, and yeah, they're not as durable as the metal ones for sure. The newer Magpul ones are probably better. I know they have metal tabs and all that. And then the Bulgarian Circle 10s are supposed to be really amazing. But this magazine right here has been fully loaded with 30 rounds since 2013. It's been in a stash box of mine. I've heard of people having these just explode basically if they leave them loaded, and these feed lips just bust off. But this has been fully loaded, like I said, for around 7 years, and I've never had any trouble with these at the range. They may not survive, a drop right onto the feed lips while they're loaded. I think these tabs are a lot stronger than people give them credit for. So I just wanted to talk about that because I use these things at the range. Maybe you wouldn't want to risk your life on them if you had other options, but I really don't think they deserve all the hate that they get. So part of the import process to get past the 922R is that when Century Arms imported these, they had to open up the mag well because they came with single stack magazines. So they had to cut that out to take a regular AK mag. They put US made furniture on them for some of the parts. I think they put a US grip, US hammer and trigger, US muzzle device, and I think that's it. The magazine, it came with a Magpul magazine, so that counts as 2 parts or 3 parts. I think the base, the body, maybe it's just the base and the body. So this is US made furniture. It's not Serbian furniture that they used on their military rifles like some of the older Zastava AK imports. I forget what that one is called. Maybe the OPAP has the thicker receiver. I think it has grenade launcher sights on it. But this is just this wood is ugly, especially this buttstock is way too blonde. I just don't like how it looks. But I want to leave the wood on here just because I have an AK that's got an adjustable stock and plastic furniture and all that, but I want this one to look kind of classic and keep the wood. And I may end up buying on the NPAPs, the way that the butt stock attaches is different from other AKs, so you have to use Serbian NPAP specific furniture, and I may end up changing that out and buying a set of used surplus furniture. I'm not sure yet. I really hate this buttstock because it's tiny. I mean, look at my hand. That thing is really small. It's really short, and it beats the heck out of my cheek when I shoot it. I actually get a not a bruise that you can see, but like my jaw where I put it up against the rifle just gets smacked every time I shoot it. So I may not keep this, but for now I'm going to take it off and I'm going to refinish it with some darker finish, and we'll see how it looks. So if you want to know how to take one of these apart, there's tons of videos on it. I'm not going to show that. So I'm just going to pull this down, take this furniture off, and then we'll get to refinishing it. Okay, so I've broken the rifle down and taken all the wood off. The only metal piece left is this little tab right here, and I really don't feel like trying to pry it out. It won't be a big deal. But it does look a little darker in the video, but this is just really blonde. There's not a lot of character to it. So I'm going to try to do some work on this and make it look a little better. So the first thing that I'm going to do is wipe it down with acetone really good and strip the old finish off of it. Okay, I changed my mind. I have some of this and I'm going to try it. I used this on a stock years ago and I was pretty impressed with it. This has been on my shelf for a long time, so we'll see if it still works. But I'm going to paint this on with a paintbrush and let it sit for 30 minutes, and that ought to do the trick. If you use this stuff, make sure you get some real gloves, not just nitrile gloves. It will eat through that. You need some real chemical resistant gloves, because this stuff, it's, you know, citrus based, but it is pretty nasty. So I'm just gonna dump some out in here. See if you guys can see that. Okay. And then I'm just gonna paint it on with a paintbrush. It doesn't have to be super thick, but make sure you get a pretty decent coat. Sorry, the view is kind of bad. I don't have a very good place to put the camera, but I think you get the picture. Just gonna paint a decently thick coat on here and let it sit. I think what I'm going to do with this is stain it kind of a darker color and then use Tom's 3-part stock treatment, which is beeswax, turpentine, and boiled linseed oil. It'll give it more of a military look instead of the shiny polymer type look that it has. I really don't like that. This stuff's nice and thick, so that's kind of nice. It stays on there real easy. Hopefully this stuff isn't too old and still works good. Figured I better use it up before it turns completely solid on me. They make a spray of this citrus strip. Do not get it, because for me, the time I got it, the spray can clogged really quick and it was totally worthless. I couldn't get any of it out of the can. So definitely get the jug if you're gonna do this. Maybe I just got a faulty spray bottle, but I'm not sure. After that happened, I decided to go with the jug and just paint it on. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit a half hour and come back and wipe it off, and hopefully all that poly and stain will come off with it. Okay, it's been about 40 minutes, so what I'm going to do is take a old card and just start scraping this stuff off. And we'll see how it looks. Oh yeah, you can tell it definitely stripped what was on there. I think I'm gonna try just a paper towel. Yeah. It's definitely working pretty good. This wood might have some character to it once I'm done with it. Oops. I was looking online a little bit ago for surplus M70 stocks taken off of actual full auto wartime guns, and the cheapest I could find for these 3 parts was $90. Apex Gunworks has them for like $155 for the set. I really don't want to pay that much, so I'm going to try to do what I can with this. I noticed that the surplus buttstock is a good bit fatter and taller. This thing is just tiny. I don't know what they were thinking when they went with this, but I guess it saves them money, less wood. Who knows? Yep. Stuff got down into the screw holes. That's going to be fun to clean out. Alright. So I'm just going to wipe these off, and then I'm going to come back with some acetone and clean the remaining residue off of them. That piece is actually pretty dark, but it is kind of wet, so I bet it'll lighten up when it's dry. So I'm going to get the rest of this gunk off there, and then I'll come back when I'm done with that. Okay, I've got all that junk wiped off as good as I can. So now I'm going to take some acetone to it and scrub it down. I used a little punch to get all the cracks because you're going to end up with that gel all in there. And I think if you leave it, it would soften the wood over time. So definitely try to get all that out if you do use the citrus strip stuff. Okay, so I just have a bunch of torn up t-shirts that I'm going to use as rags. Definitely wear gloves. With acetone, it will dry your skin out really bad. And it also can seep in through your skin. Definitely not very good for you. The good thing about acetone as well is it dries it out really good, which is going to get the wood ready for the pre-stain that I put on. So this will dissolve any of that citrus strip that's left on there and dry it out. Pretty handy. I tried to use one of these little guys, but the acetone eats it up, in case you have that idea. Alright. This looks like it's working pretty good. Look how much darker the handguard is. It's kind of weird. Make sure after you do this, you put some oil on this little deal, because you're stripping every bit of oil off of it, and that thing will rust if you just put it back in without oiling it up when you're done refinishing this. Or you can take it out. I just didn't feel like taking it out. I can't believe how much darker that piece is. like 3 different shades. It all looked pretty similar before I stripped it. That's okay though. I want it to be darker anyway. I'm going to use walnut stain. One of these days I definitely want to put a surplus stock set on this though. It just gives it so much more character. Not to mention the shape of this US compliant one, I just don't like it. Of course, you have to remember, if you do that and you put Yugo parts back on it, you're gonna mess with your 922R part numbers. So if you care about that, some people don't, but if you do, definitely pay attention and change out some other parts to get your 922R part count correct. Okay, so all I'm doing here is taking a gun cleaning brush and getting all the corners and small edges, making sure I get all that junk off of there. You know, you don't see these little lips, but you really do see a tiny bit of it. They're never fitting perfect, so if you want it to look good once the metal's on, definitely try to get all of that citrus strip out if you use it. It may have been way easier just to start with acetone on this. It probably would have been, but I had the citrus strip, I wanted to use it. It's working fine. I think I probably added more work for myself, but I think acetone would have done the same thing. So that's it. I'm just getting all these crevices and everything. Okay, I'm back. It's been about an hour since I last rubbed it down with acetone. I wiped it down once, and then I came back once it dried, and then I did it again. There were a couple small spots where I think I had some of the citrus strip on my gloves, and it was still on the wood. So right now what I'm going to do is use some 500 grit sandpaper. I'm not trying to really smooth this out. I'm just kind of trying to open up the pores in the wood a little bit to help the stain take. And then after that, I'm going to put pre-stain on it. So here we go. I'm just going to rub this down very lightly. Like I said, I'm not trying to smooth anything off or round any corners. Just a real light sanding. And we'll see how that does. These sanding pads are better for this, but mine are all gunked up. So I'm just using some paper. It really doesn't look much different. But I did this on the last stock that I did, and it did seem to help. So when you do this, you got to make sure afterwards to get all of that sanding dust off of there. So I'm going to go back after this and wipe them all down again with some acetone. Blow them off with some compressed air and just make sure. But as you can see, I'm not really doing much. It's just, I'm kind of roughing it up a little bit more than I am smoothing it, because it was really, really smooth. I don't know what I'm doing, so don't listen to me. I'm just showing you how I do it. It may turn out super ugly, and someday I'll just buy a military set. Put that on there. That's what I want, really. This looks okay, but I mean, it's pretty cheap wood. It's really soft, really light. And as I've said about 10 times, I can't stand this little thing. Okay. If you go too nuts with these, you know, you're going to round edges off, and you really don't want to do that. I'm just really lightly sanding this. Okay, and now it all just feels a little more rough. Hopefully, once I clean this off, it'll have kind of opened up the pores a little bit. And then I'm going to clean these a couple times, blow them off, and then when I come back, we'll put some pre-stain on. Okay, I have busted out the Minwax pre-stain wood conditioner. I'm just going to rub these down with one of these little foam brushes. There's a hole in the bottom of this for the stock bolt. It makes it easy to hold on to. You're supposed to put this on and then start your first coat of staining within 2 hours. This doesn't take real long to dry, and I'm probably putting way too much on. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. I'm gonna go set this on something so it'll stay up. Oh, it fits perfect on my vise handle. Handy. Okay. And I used way too much on that other piece. Hopefully it doesn't screw it up. Sorry I've been gone for so long and haven't made any videos. I kind of go through phases sometimes where I'll just be gun crazy working on guns and reloading like every day, and then I'll just take months off where I don't touch any of it. It's weird. Part of it has to do with my back being messed up, but another part is that I just go from obsessed to just doing other things and leaving it alone for a while. But I've got the itch again, so here I am. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll come back and do our first coat of stain. Okay, I'm back. I let the pre-stain dry. I'm going to wipe off the wood in case there's any excess still on there. It looks pretty dry to me. Nothing seems to be coming off. And then I'm going to apply my first coat of stain. It's going to look really dark because I'm using dark walnut. I'm not sure how many coats I'm going to do, but we will see. I've got the Minwax stain right over here. I'm going to use one of these little foam brushes, and we'll see how it does. I need a smaller brush. I'm supposed to go with the grain. Oh, that's not working. Alright, I need a smaller brush. Okay, got a smaller brush. people that do this a lot probably are going nuts because I'm sure I'm not doing it right, or I'm sure there's much better ways to do this, but that's okay. If I mess up, I can strip it and start again. One thing you got to be careful of is you don't want, all that excess. You don't want to let that completely dry. Follow the instructions and come back after the time limit. I forget what it says. But you're going to come back after a while and you're going to wipe all that excess off because it'll gum up. If you leave it on. I'm going to go ahead and do the whole thing, even though you don't see these parts. Okay, sorry if I was off the screen there. All right. Don't worry, it will not look anywhere near this dark once it dries. If you look at pictures of the old surplus furniture, it's all pretty dark. I'm not sure how dark it was when it started out, but years of use and gun oil and all that make them pretty dark. Okay, I'm gonna lean that. Oh, that's not good. There we go. All right, last piece. I'm just going to sit that down like that. Okay, that is the first coat. I'll let it sit for the allotted time. I forget what it is. I'll look on the bottle here. And then we'll come back and wipe off the excess, and then I think it has to dry overnight. Okay, I'm back after 15 minutes. And I think I was wrong. I think this is going to look a lot darker than I thought, but that's okay. Right now all I'm going to do is wipe off the excess, and then it's going to sit overnight. And then tomorrow I'll either do a light sanding or some quad aught steel wool to kind of rough it up before I do the next coat. So, okay. Yeah, it's not going to be as dark as I thought. Just wiping off the excess here so that there aren't any blotches. I think this is going to turn out pretty good. It's going to take a few coats though. But this has definitely brought out a little more of the wood grain. Not sure how that's showing up, but before you really couldn't see anything. It just kind of looked like plain blonde wood. It's kind of boring. Oh, and that piece is way darker. Interesting. Wonder if it was a different type of wood or just came from a different tree, different part of the tree, I don't know. You got to be careful what gets on your hand too. You'll just be wiping it right back on. Alright. Looks pretty good. Now for the buttstock. Well, that didn't take much at all. Look how blonde that is. May have to rough this up more or just put a bunch of coats on. It's weird. I prepped them all the same, but this piece is just didn't take the stain near as well. That's alright. Took a little bit of it, but not much. The ending sure took a lot. Make sure you don't leave any splotches. It's real easy to do. Get a little piece on your finger and wipe it back on. Alright. Okay, so these are going to sit overnight. And we'll see how they look tomorrow. Okay guys, I'm back. It's been about 4 or 5 hours, and as you can see, the hand guards are looking quite a bit darker than the buttstock, but that's okay. Right now I'm gonna hit everything with some of this 4-aught steel wool, and then I'm going to clean it real good, get all the little steel wool particles and dust and stuff off of it, and then I'm going to put another layer on. So basically I'm just going to do this to all of it, do that in between every coat, and you're going to make a mess, and you got to be real careful. Make sure you clean it real good before you go to put your next coat on, because there's going to be dust and stain particles and steel particles everywhere. But you're not going at it real hard, just give it a rub down. So I'm going to do all of it and then clean it, and we'll be back to put the next coat on. Alright, I got it all wiped down. I made sure to try to clean my rag off real good too, so I'm not putting junk back on it when I sit it down. And I'm just going to do the same thing again. I think I'm going to put it on thicker, as you can see, on this buttstock, because it just isn't soaking it up as well. And if it continues to do this, I may have to go back and sand it a little rougher. I don't know. I obviously am not very good at this, so I've never had a piece of wood that's takes the stain as slow as this. It just may take you know, extra coats on this piece. I don't know. But I'm gonna slather it on there good. And let it sit a little longer this time. Don't really need to worry about these cracks, but alright. That is pretty thick. This is the darkest piece, so I'll probably go the lightest on it. Actually, I'll probably just come back and wipe it off sooner than I do the other pieces. Try to clean this off some. Go a little lighter on this piece. This isn't very exciting. I might try to speed up my footage so you don't have to sit here and watch me mumble while I stain these. Okay, I think I'm gonna go 5 minutes. I did 15 minutes on all three pieces last time. I think I'm gonna go 5 minutes on the hand guards and 15 on the buttstock. Alright, 5 minutes is up. And this hand guard, it's getting pretty close. This is about what I'm looking for. Maybe a little darker, but these are getting real close. Not sure how well that shows up to you guys. Sorry, I'm kind of upside down here. But you can definitely see the character in the wood much better. I hope that shows up on the camera. I'm not sure if it will. But I can tell just looking at it. And then when I'm done with, I'm not going to put, a lot of people, you know, do whatever you like, whatever floats your boat, and don't let anybody tell you different. But I don't really like the poly finishes that make them all shiny. Depends on the gun, but for something like this, or an SKS, or a Mosin, which I really recommend not refinishing surplus guns. This isn't a surplus gun, it's commercial. There's a ton of them and there's no history behind them really, but I don't like refinishing military surplus stuff, but whenever, if I do something like that, I like to put on this Tom's 1 and 3 mix and give it kind of a linseed oil protective coating instead of the real shiny shellac or poly or whatever. Alright, so these are going to need to dry for several hours. And here in a few minutes I'm going to do the buttstock and we'll see how it looks. Alright, I am back to do the buttstock and I wonder how well this is going to take. I'm not sure if you can see that. It looks like it's almost like it's beating up on this, like it's, the surface is still sealed and it's not getting in, but took a little bit. It's just gonna take a lot of coats, I guess. Again, you can see it next to the other pieces. It's not near as dark. I don't know, this is kind of weird. It's really almost like it's not absorbing. I might have to do some searching online and see if anybody has some suggestions. It may just be the type of wood they use. I really don't know. I don't see how there could be any kind of coating on this still after the citrus strip and 2 baths in acetone. There's no way. Just doesn't seem, oh my gosh, it doesn't seem to be really taking it. But maybe it is. Just slowly. Okay. That stuff is going to sit while I go to bed. And I will mess with it again tomorrow. Okay guys, I'm back. It's the next day. It's been a little over 12 hours since I put the last coats on here. And I did some reading overnight. And I found a post on marylandshooters.com, which is a really good site, by the way. They're real friendly even if you're not from there. But someone had a Wasser 10. Sorry, that noises my cat. Somebody has a Wasser 10 that has the same furniture on it. I know that they don't fit the same, but it looked like the exact same wood, and he was having the exact same problem as me. He was using this stain, and it just was not taking to the buttstock. It was fine on the hand guards. So he got a lot of responses and a lot of suggestions, and basically someone said to strip the buttstock completely, sand it with about a 180 grit, and then use a water-based stain, because they said that will absorb and take much better on this kind of wood. We're not sure exactly what kind of wood this is, but something about it just will not work with this Minwax oil stain. So the first thing I got is this Minwax water-based stain. It's a walnut. It doesn't look like it's going to be as dark of a walnut, because this is dark walnut and this is walnut. But there really aren't a lot of choices. I went to Ace Hardware and Lowe's, and they just don't have many water-based stains. I also got some Minwax gel stain. Unfortunately, they didn't have dark walnut in it, but I got mahogany. So if this doesn't work, we'll strip it again and we'll try that. So what I'm going to do right now is strip this with acetone again, and then I'm going to sand it. I'm not going to film that just because you've seen me do that already. And I'm going to put another coat of the same Minwax oil based on these, since it's taken just fine. And I'll try to match them. If they don't match in the end, I'll just strip these and use the water based on them. So that is the plan, and we'll come back when I got this stripped and sanded, and we'll try that water based out. Okay guys, I'm back. I took acetone to this real good several times and sanded it with a 180 grit foam pad, and now I think I got it stripped pretty good and got all the dust off of it. So let's try this water-based stain out and see if it holds. See how we do. This stuff's kind of weird. It's like chocolate syrup. Hopefully this will take much better. It sure is a different consistency. Like I said, it's like smearing Hershey's syrup on here. It smells like paint. Sorry if you guys don't have a good view. This stuff is definitely different, so hopefully it does the trick. Nice. Oh, crap. Very nice. I don't know if I'm putting this on way too thick or not thick enough or what, but we'll find out. Trying to keep it with the grain. Get it on there even as I can. Sorry, I can barely see my little viewfinder. Okay. I'm gonna let that dry and we'll see if it stays. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I was reading the instructions again, and it looks like I was doing this wrong. You're supposed to apply it with a cloth. So after rubbing all that on with the foam like I showed you, I just got out a soft, it's not a paper towel, but it's a little softer than a regular paper towel. And I'm just rubbing the excess off, and I can already tell it's darker. So maybe we're getting somewhere. So I'm gonna let this dry for an hour and come back and do the second coat. But we're making a little headway. Okay guys, I'm back. It's been an hour and you can see how it looks here compared to the handguard. I'm making some progress. This is just one coat. So I'm gonna put another on, and this time I'm just gonna use a cloth to do it instead of the foam brush, because that just put it on way too thick and it wasn't not a correct way to apply it, it looked like. So I'm gonna try a soft paper towel and we'll see how it does. I don't know how many coats I'm gonna do. Yeah, that's too thick too. It's definitely working. I mean, before just nothing was absorbing into the wood, and this really, I can tell already it's just doing the trick. There may be a better type of cloth to do this with, I don't know. Uh-oh, they're coming for me. You got to be careful with this stuff. As you're wiping it on, it dries pretty fast, and you can end up with like thick spots that don't want to wipe off. Got some streaks on there. That's okay. All right. getting there. So I'm going to let that dry for an hour. Try to wipe off some of these streaks if I can. Really doesn't want to come off. That's alright. I'm going to do several coats, so. I'm just happy that I'm getting somewhere. And if I can't get it to match, like I said before, I will strip the hand guards and use this. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I don't know if you can tell on the video, this is a little more shiny, probably because it's an oil-based finish. But when I'm done, I'm going to apply that Tom's wax to this, and it should shine it up a little bit because of the boiled linseed oil. So I may be able to make it match with that. But I pretty much have 3 shades going here. This is the darkest, but it's an AK, man. It doesn't have to be perfect. So that's gonna sit for an hour, and we'll come back and do another coat. Alright guys, I just realized I didn't have the microphone turned on while I did the 3rd coat. So I'm going to just cut that footage out. But I just put the 3rd coat on. And before I did this coat, I used steel wool on it. And that kind of helps break down any areas where you get like a thick streak. You got to work really fast with this stuff. It's not like the oil-based where you just slap it on nice and thick and leave it. You really have to work quick, because this stuff dries really fast when you get it thin, which is how you need it. So I'm going to let this dry and then decide from there. It's getting close in darkness, but I mean, it's a different type of wood, so it's really not going to match perfectly, but I think I'm getting the shade close anyway. Okay guys, I'm back. We have 3 coats on each of these. The water based on this and the Minwax oil based on this. And I know they don't look, they don't match real great right now, but what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and start the Tom's 1-3 mix, because I know that will probably change the appearance a little bit, and I want to see if I can kind of blend them and make them match a little better with this stuff, or if I need to strip these and do the water based on these, which won't be a big deal because this goes really quick versus the Minwax. It dries really fast, and I think you only have to wait an hour in between doing anything to it. It doesn't say in the instructions to wait like a whole day before you do your final treatment like the Minwax does. Well, it says 8 hours minimum before you would do something like putting this 1-3 on. So I'm going to put these to the side, and I'm going to rub some on here. And I've used this stuff before, and the best way I found to do it is just to use my bare hand and use heat from friction to help rub it in. I have no idea how this water-based stain is going to react to this stuff, so this is going to be an experiment. But I can strip this stuff so quick, I'm not really worried if I have to go back and do it over. I got nothing better to do. So here we go. This stuff is really thick. It almost feels like chunky Vaseline almost. So I'll just get a little bit on my hand like that and just start rubbing it in and try to get to where I can feel it start to heat up. And none of it's coming off on my hand, none of the stain, I mean, so that's good. I used this on Civilian Marksmanship Program Grand, M1 Grand stock. The one that I bought from them, it came with a new CMP stock on it. So it was really dry. Really nice walnut stock, but it was just bone dry. So I put several coats of this stuff on it. And what you do is you just rub it in until you can feel it starting to get hot. And that helps it absorb. And then it's going to leave it looking kind of dull. And then you come back in 30 minutes and kind of buff it with a cloth. And then you can, I forget, it says on the bottle how long you need to wait to do another coat. I think you do have to wait a little while in between. But, so I'm just going to get this to where I feel like it's even. And then wait a half hour. And then I'll come back and kind of buff it up and we'll see how it looks. Okay guys, I'm back. It's been a half hour since I rubbed this coating on here, and I went ahead and decided to do the hand guards too, even though I hadn't waited the full 8 hours from my last coat, but I don't think it hurt it at all. As you can see, they don't match very well, and they're probably not going to, but right now I can see kind of a waxy coating on there. And what I'm going to do is buff that out with a soft paper towel. And then I have to wait 8 to 10 hours, I believe. 8 to 10 hours and do 2 to 3 coats. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the 3 coats on all these parts and then just, I might assemble the gun and just see how I think it looks. I was looking online at a lot of AKs, and I've noticed that a lot of them have different looking wood between the hand guards and the buttstock, so I'll see how it looks, and maybe I'll leave it and maybe I'll strip these, who knows. So all I'm going to do is buff this out. One thing you want to know, this 1 in 3 mix, it does contain boiled linseed oil. If you've never worked with boiled linseed oil, it has a very distinct smell, and your rifle will smell like that for a year or more. From all the guns I've done, it takes an extremely long time for that odor to go away. It doesn't bother me, but if you've ever smelled it and you don't like it, I wouldn't mess with it because it smells. That's just kind of how it is. Man, this looks really good, actually. I really love this stuff. Like I said before in my little rant, I don't really like poly finishes or shellac finishes. I just think this is just a more old school looking finish to me. I did watch a video on a guy earlier. I wish I remember his channel name, but he did use straight up polymer on a surplus Yugo stock set, and it looked pretty good, really. It's just a little too shiny for my taste, that's all. I think that this brings out the character in the wood a little better. Sorry, upside down here. Now this piece of wood had basically zero character. It just looked like a blonde piece of wood and nothing else. And now I can actually see some of the character in the wood, and that's pretty cool. This stuff buffs out pretty easy. As you can see, it has taken a little bit of the finish with it, but that's no big deal. And it could have come from the edges. Because when I rubbed it on with my hand, I didn't see anything on my bare hand, so. These hand guards too, they look so much better now that I've done this versus whatever Century Arms uses on their stuff. It just has no character. I really want to get a surplus set. I just don't know if I can bring myself to spend. I think the cheapest one I found is like 90 bucks. And like 135 for the buttstock and the handguards. And I think at this point, with the way worrying about gun laws in the future and stuff, I think I'd rather just spend that on ammo. Man, that looks good. Not sure how it will look in the video, but my camera isn't the best. But it really does look pretty cool. Alright, so 8 to 10 hours. And I'll do it again. Hi guys, it's the next day, and this is how it looks after the first coat of Tom's 1 and 3 mix. And I realize they look nothing alike, but I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and put 2 more coats of this on and then put it on the actual gun. Forgive me, I'm sick today. I can hardly talk, but I'm going to finish it, put it on the gun and see how it looks, and then decide from there whether I want to redo these handguards or not. So the next time you see it, I'll have it done and on the gun, and I'll go from there. Hey guys, so I did put all the coats of the Tom's 1 and 3 on these handguards, and I thought they looked awesome, but they just looked way too different from the buttstock that I decided to strip them, and then I'm going to use the same water-based stuff on these that I did on the buttstock. So I didn't film it, I just went and did the citrus strip and then a couple acetone baths, and so now I got them pretty well stripped. So I'm just going to go through and do the exact same procedure I did on the buttstock and then the Tom's 1 and 3, and go ahead and just assemble the gun, and then I'll come back and show the gun once it's done. There's no reason to film it. You already seen me do all these steps on with the other stain, and so that's what I'm going to do, and you'll see it when it's done. Okay guys, here it is. I'm finally done with it. I'm really happy with it. I went ahead and stripped the handguards and refinished them with the same water-based stain that I used on the buttstock, and it looks really good, I think. It looks a lot better than it did when I started, that's for sure. The plain old blonde look, the stain, and this Tom's 1 and 3 really brought out the character in the wood, especially the handguards. One thing I wanted to mention that gets a lot of complaints on these, especially the Century Arms, you know, US furniture, not necessarily the surplus furniture. I don't know if they do it as bad, but sometimes this will come loose and it'll wobble here, and I'm not sure if it's the wood compressing under pressure or the bolt starting to come loose, or a combination of both. So if you do this, when you go to put this buttstock back on, degrease the inner threads and degrease the threads on the bolt and put some Loctite on there, and if the bolt coming loose would ever be a problem, that's going to solve it. It's not going to help if this kind of cheap wood starts compressing on you, but that ought to help. And be really careful with these back buttstock screws. They're really small and they just go straight into this soft wood, and it's really easy to strip them or tighten them too much. So I put a little bit of dab of glue on each of the screws before I screwed them back in, and that'll help hold them. So that's it, I'm done. I hope this helps somebody who's thinking about doing the same thing, and you can see from my failures and mistakes, and it might help your project out a little bit. So that's it, and I will talk to you guys on the next video. Now that I got this thing open, one of the things I wanted to talk about is the issue with the bolt carrier peening. You will see people complaining on some of these. They'll show pictures, and this spot right here will be all mushroomed out, and they'll make claims that Zastava doesn't know how to heat treat their metal, that it's junk metal, soft metal. But the real issue is this bolt carrier is made to operate with Zastava made hammer and trigger, but when they bring these in, they have to put a US made hammer and trigger in them, and the hammer that they used has this hump on it right here, and that hump beats against that tail and peens it out, and the original Serbian parts does not have that hump. So there's a few things you can do. Some people just don't care because it really has to mushroom a ton to cause any real issues, and it'll usually work harden itself eventually before it gets bad enough to start causing failures. But what I did when I got it, I heard about these issues, so I took the hammer right out and I shaved that hump down with a grinder, and you have to put it back in here and test it and make sure it still catches on the trigger pull end, catches again while you still have the trigger pulled, and then resets. And if you shave too much off, it won't catch on that reset, and you'll have some major issues when you go to the range. So if you do that, do it slow. You're going to take this hump off right here, not a ton of metal, just some, and then try it, and make sure the trigger and the hammer functions properly, that the safety still works. I don't think there's any videos out there on how to do that, but there are some like forum posts with pictures. So if you do a Google search, I think you'd be able to find some pictures to show you exactly what to do if you need help with that. So I just wanted to show you that while I had this apart. I think I probably have I haven't shot this a ton, maybe 1,000 rounds, and I mean, you can't see any mushrooming on that, maybe a tiny bit. But I also, one of the other things that will help it is putting a heavier wolf recoil spring on, and I did do that. The recoil spring that came with this gun felt pretty weak to me, so I didn't want it to beat itself to death, so I put that heavier wolf spring on there. Okay, back off the topic a little bit. I was thinking about AKs and wanted to show you guys this one. This is the gun that got me into gunsmithing. It was around 2012. There were some shootings, and the president was constantly talking about trying to ban guns. I wasn't really into guns at the time, but I always thought AKs were kind of cool. I was pretty broke at the time, but I saw that, is it Sega was bringing in these sporters that were 7.62 by 39. There was no muzzle device. It was capped and welded on the end. They only took 10-round Saiga specific magazines. They would not accept regular AK mags. And the pistol grip was way in the back. You've probably seen these and you know about the conversions that have to be done. But it was $299. You can't hardly find these things now for anywhere near a decent price, but it was $299 for just the base rifle, and then I did all the conversion myself. I did the work moving the grip up and the trigger guard and all that, converting it to take regular AK mags, and this thing is awesome. I really love it. It turned out that there were threads on the barrel if you cut off that cap that they put on there. So I cut that off and put a muzzle device on it. So this thing is amazing. I love it. It was my first semi-automatic rifle, and it's not only the gun that got me into guns, but got me into working on guns too. So I just wanted to show you guys that. I really love it. I wish it was still the good old days where you could get $299 rifles like that. Would be kind of nice. Okay, quick thing I wanted to show you. My awesome dad got me this for Christmas. This is actual US surplus furniture on here. This is a Nodak Spud upper receiver. The lower receiver is just a regular Anderson, but it's got the Brownells upper and barrel and all the parts for their retro AR. And then I got this sling new on Amazon, but it's pretty awesome. I really like that it has the surplus furniture. The new furniture, it looks okay, but it's kind of cheap plastic, and you can really tell that it's not, you know, I like the beat up classic look. So that's that. Just wanted to show you.